Sudette, are you there?
I am here. I am
I'm
here.
here too. Wonderful. Okay, guys, ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much for bearing with us through this small technical computer snafu that we had. Now that we have that all squared away and fixed, and lovely IT people behind the scenes have gotten this all working properly again. I thank them. Sue, I thank you for bearing with me. I thank everyone else for hanging out while we fixed our small technical issues. And hello and happy Veterans Day. Thank you to all those that have served for us. We do appreciate our freedom because of you. Welcome to another education series by U.S. Patriot Title and First American Title. Sue Dutcher will be going over the changes to the new contract, not the new, it's same contract. It's just been updated a little bit. Sue, are you doing FARBAR and NEFAR?
Nope, just FARBAR. That's what you guys asked for. Changes
right.
to the new FARBAR contract. Nothing new to the NEFAR.
Nothing's new to the NEFAR, then perfect. Thank you so much.
So let's see if I can share my screen here. Okay, you have to allow me. You have to allow me to share my screen.
It will not.
No, you have to give me permission.
Hang on.
Hey Sue,
Let me see if I can find you real quick.
Do I have permission now? All right, let's try it. Okay, do you guys see my screen big?
I see your name.
You just see my name?
Yes, so we don't see your picture or anything.
You don't see my PowerPoint presentation?
No. Do you want me to try it on my end?
Yeah, try it on your end, Veronica. Let's see if it'll come up on Veronica's.
See.
Oh, there's Veronica. Hey, Veronica.
Hey, Scott. All right, let's see.
Veronica's will, yep. Looks like hers wants to share.
There we
go.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah, you know, we're a dynamic duo. We can do anything.
Hey, welcome to the modern age where everything works except for when you need it to.
Yeah, we're like MacGyver. As long as we have a paper clip and a rubber band, we can do anything.
Well, I'm going to mute myself, Sue, and I'm going to let you and Veronica take control of this crazy train.
All righty, thank you. Thank you all. So we're going to go over the changes in the 2021 FARBAR contract. In addition to that, I'm going to talk about some things that aren't changing, but people still have questions about. And then I'm going to talk about something a little bit scary that's going on in our industry. So if you have any questions as we go along, please put them in the chat. And we'll be happy to answer any questions that you might have. So Veronica, let's go to the first change.
All right, let's see. Wish me luck.
There.
Oh, God.
No, go out.
Sorry.
Nope, go back. That's okay. Go
There
back.
we go.
Here you go. All right.
Sorry.
That's okay. So the changes affect both the as-is and the standard contract, but we'll go over the standard contract today just because that's the one that most people use. Some changes are very minimal, such as not everything is in all caps anymore, not everything is in all bold anymore. But the first change is in the personal property, and that's on line 15, page 1 of 2, and it talks about the changes in what is included in the personal property. So it now includes thermostats, doorbells, television wall mounts, television mounting hardware, mailbox keys, and storm protection items and hardware. And they've decided to eliminate intercoms because nobody has them anymore. So it's really important that you guys think about this because so many people have the fancy thermostats that are attached to their telephones or their Alexa or their computer. Same thing with the doorbells, the Ring doorbells. So we need to make sure that, and I suppose I should put on my video there. We need to make sure that you are aware of those changes. So, you know, if your seller has a Ring doorbell and they want to take it with them when they go, be sure that you put it down in line 24, which is the exclusion. I've had a lot of people ask me about the television scenario, and they say, do we have to leave our big screen TV? And the answer is no. but you have to leave the wall mounts and the mounting hardware. But you can take your TV anywhere you want. Again, if you have a seller that doesn't want to include that, be sure that you put that down in the exclusion section. If we go to the next section, this is a change, but not really a change. Now, let me explain why. Paragraph 4, when we talk about line 50, page 1 of 2, it's always said that the closing could finally occur when all of the closing docs had been furnished by each party. That provision was there. The second provision, which has to do with Standard S, has always been there in Standard S. What they did was take the information from Standard S and move it up to the closing date. And so now not only does it say we have to have all the documents, but we have to have all of the funds received by the agent and collected pursuant to Standard S. So that means we have to have them. They have to be collected in our escrow account, which means they have been designated as good funds. So that paragraph has been in there. They put that in there when we started closing under the CFPB guidelines. And under the CFPB guidelines, the buyer must sign their documents on the day of closing, or as they call it, the day of consummation, which means if I'm a mail away buyer and today is my closing day, there is no way that the title company is going to get my documents and my money today. So that's the big change with the closing date. We go to the next screen. The next change occurs on paragraph 5, line 55, page 2 of 12. It talks about the extension of the closing date. So under the CFPB guidelines, Consumer Financial Protection Bureau guidelines, and TRID, TILA-RESPA integrated disclosure, it said if the lender's funds were not available due to them having not met the CFPB requirements, it used to say that the contract would be extended for 10 days. They have limited that now to 7 days. That is only for the lender under a TRID. So if the lender under TRID has not been able to do what they needed to do, which would be send a preliminary closing disclosure to the buyer 3 days prior to the closing, and send a copy of the appraisal to the buyer 3 days prior to closing, then it could be extended for 7 days now instead of 10. The next screen talks about the changes in the occupancy and possession clause. Occupancy and possession now covers disclosure of seasonal or short-term vacation rentals. So think Airbnbs, okay? Tenant estoppel letters will not be required on seasonal or short-term vacation rentals. Please do not get that mixed up with HOA or condo estoppel letters. It's just in the tenant estoppel letter will not be required. They have added a new rider. It is rider DD. It is called the seasonal and vacation rental rider. So if indeed this property does fall under the seasonal and vacation rental provisions, please make sure that the parties sign rider DD, David. In addition to that, they've reminded everybody if the buyer is going to occupy the property prior to closing, then rider T should be executed. And if the seller is going to stay in the property after the closing, that rider U has been executed and included with the contract. We go to the next big change, and that's assignability. The boxes didn't change. You can still assign the contract and be released. You can still sign the contract and not be released, or it's still not an assignable contract. Now they have added a default. So on line 85, page 2 of 12, it says, if no box is checked, then the buyer may not assign the contract. Does anybody have any questions yet on what we went over, which was the change in personal property, the pulling of standard S up to the closing, extension of closing, occupancy and possession, or assignability? Anybody have any questions on that portion yet. Scott, do you see any questions in the chat yet?
There isn't any questions yet, Sue.
All right, thanks, Veronica.
You're welcome.
All right. Oh, who are the parties to sign a post-occupancy agreement? Frank, the parties to sign the post-occupancy agreement would be the buyer and seller, same parties who are going to sign the contract. Thank you for asking. Okay, we'll go to the financing section. That's a big change right here. Financing used to be based on the buyer's ability to, oh, let me answer that really quick. Can title draft the post-closing occupancy agreement? No, that is done by the real estate agents. We don't draft any documents pursuant to contracts or addendums. Big change again in paragraph 8 is the financing. Used to be it was just based on the buyer getting his financing and obtaining his loan approval. Now they have also tied in the lender's receipt of the property appraisal or alternative valuation satisfactory to the lender. So now it's just not, you know, the buyer said, I'd get my loan approved in 30 days, and I did. I'm approved for my financing. It is now also the lender's receipt of the property appraisal or alternative valuation satisfactory to the lender. Now, not all lenders, especially lenders who are coming from out of state, are going to have any idea that this is in the contract. So one of the things that I suggest, and I only suggest things because I'm not an attorney, is that you talk to the lender right up front so that they understand that this is now part of the contract, that they have to be able to get their property appraisal within whatever that period is. So when you're getting ready to write a contract and you talk to the buyer's lender and the buyer's lender says, you know what, we think this is going to take us 45 days to get our appraisal, you might want to be thinking about, okay, then I want to do my loan approval 45 days, not 30 days. It always said that the buyer should keep the seller and the broker fully informed about the status of the buyer's mortgage loan application, the processing, the appraisal, and the loan approval. Now it says only upon written request. So if I'm the buyer and the seller and the broker don't request that information from me in writing, I don't have to say anything, if you look at the last paragraph, until just when my loan is approved. Used to say that as soon as the loan was approved, I'd let everybody know. Now it says, I only have to let you know prior to the expiration of the loan approval period, which means I could let you know that very day before. I will tell you that no lenders, I always like to say no lenders were harmed, but you know, like animals when they do testing, no lenders were asked what they thought about the change in the financing. So it's not like the lender said, hey, FARBAR committee, make this change because this is good for us. They made the change. I'm going to tell you, a lot of lenders don't even know yet about the change and the requirement to get the appraisal within the loan approval period. Anybody have any questions on the changes in the financing section? And where they talk about the second part, which is the buyer's mortgage broker or lender receiving the appraisal, is on line 94 of the as-is contract. Again, in both of the contracts, just telling you what page it is on, what line number on the as-is contract. Any questions on the financing? Has anybody done, used the new FARBAR contract yet? Has anybody used the new FARBAR contract that came out November 1st? If you have, would you just type into the chat, yes, I did? Because if you have written a contract since November 1st, and it's a FARBAR contract, you should be using the new one. You should not be using the old one. Now, keep in mind that if you use the old one, that's the one we're going to close under. So Donna says
yes.
Okay, and
Lauren
Lauren
says
said,
yes.
yeah. So the question to you two lovely ladies is, was your buyer getting financing, and was your lender aware that part of the definition for the loan approval was them being able to receive their appraisal? No cash deal. Oh, no cash deal. All right, good. All right, so keep that in mind, everybody, because this is going to be a change. And you know, it's tying all this into a pretty little Christmas bow, but the lenders don't know yet. So please make sure that you're using the new contracts. Please don't use the old ones anymore. Okay, let's go to the next one. We're going to talk about all of the changes within paragraph 9, and there are several. The first change takes effect on line 3 of 12, line 141, and again, it is on both contracts. It says charges for FERPTA, Foreign Investment and Real Property Tax Act, withholding and reporting will be the responsibility of the seller. We encourage all of our title agents to utilize outside FERPTA experts to handle the FERPTA withholding and reporting. We ask our agents, unless you're FERPTA accountants or FERPTA attorneys, let the FERPTA companies who know how to do it handle the FERPTA. And now it says charges for FERPTA withholding and reporting will be paid by the seller. The next change occurs on line 164, 3 of 12, and it says, for purposes of this contract, a municipal lien search means a search of the records necessary for the owner's policy of title insurance to be issued without exception for unrecorded liens imposed to, and they've added chapter 153 to 159 and 170. Those three things are water, sewer, utilities, taxes, and assessments. It does not include code enforcement violations or open or expired permits. Now, I know that Scott orders all three as a courtesy to the closing, but the only ones the contracts address are water, sewer, utilities, taxes, and assessments. Chapter 153 didn't add anything new, so be aware of that. On page 4 of 12, under the survey provisions, line 181, the contract used to say that the survey had to be delivered at the same time as the commitment. So it used to say if the buyer was paying cash, he had to get his commitment 5 days prior to closing, which meant the survey had to be received 5 days prior to closing. And it used to say if the buyer was taking out a loan, then the commitment had to be received 15 days prior to closing, and so did the survey. They have now, on paragraph 9, changed it to the survey only has to be received 5 days prior to the closing date, regardless of the type of transaction. So it doesn't have to be received 15 days before closing anymore if it's a mortgage closing. Everything is back to 5 days. The last change in the paragraph 9 has to do with special assessments, lines 188 through 202, and it says the seller shall pay in full prior to or at the time of closing any assessments allowed by the public body to be prepaid, and for any assessment which the public body does not allow prepayment, then option A shall be deemed selected for those such assessments. It does not talk about PACE in this paragraph. However, it does allude to it by the prior paragraph, which says sellers shall pay in full prior to or at the time of closing any assessments allowed by the public body to be prepaid. We now have a new rider. It is the PACE rider. It is rider EE Edward Edward, and it does two things. The seller was always required under chapter 163.08 was always required to let the buyer know in writing, either prior to or at the time that the buyer signed the contract, that there was PACE financing on the property. This new addendum does two things. It is the written notification that the seller did use PACE in buying objects for his property, any kind of energy efficiency or wind resistant work. So it puts that notice there, and it also says, oh, and by the way, in almost every situation, the seller will have to pay off that PACE financing lien at the time of closing. The only time the buyer is going to be able to assume it is if the buyer is paying cash and wishes to assume it, or if the buyer is getting non-traditional or hard money lending, and that hard money lender is willing to take a second position because PACE is a super priority lien, and the buyer is willing to assume it, they could keep it on. If the buyer is getting traditional financing backed by FHA, VA, Fannie Mae, Freddie Mac, it will have to be paid off at closing by the seller. So before we go on, does anybody have any questions on the changes in the financing section or the changes in the closing cost section, which included FERPTA, delivery of the survey, Chapter 153 added to 159 and 170, and PACE financing? If you have any questions, we'll take a few minutes and field that group of questions.
I have a quick question just because it was going pretty fast and my volume was a little iffy. On the lender side, where it becomes the appraisal has to be within that loan approval time.
Right.
If for any reason we can't get appraisals out there, we just do a normal extension on that like we normally would, or is there going to be a certain?
No,
new
you'll have to
writer?
do, no, you'll have to do an extension.
Okay, perfect. Thank
You're
you.
welcome. Mhm. Anybody else have any questions? You can shout them out, you can chat them in, whatever you'd like to do. Don't be shy. Scott, I almost have the new contract memorized line by line, almost.
That's awesome. I have
Have
a
you-
question, Sue,
Yes.
just for everyone else's knowledge. So someone gets some PACE financing. It's on the taxes, and the buyer is going to benefit from the solar system. So, why does the seller have to pay it off?
Because it's a super priority lien over any new lien. So they do not subordinate their lien. They will not.
So,
So
in other words, if the person's getting financing, then we
Yes.
would not be able to put them in a first lien position without paying it off. So
correct.
if they're getting
Correct.
cash, though, that's something that can be between them.
Yes, yes. If the buyer pays cash and wants to assume it,
Okay.
they are more than welcome to assume it.
All right. Thank you, Sue.
You're welcome. And PACE, just so you know, is property assessed clean energy. You can buy any kind of energy efficiency things, windows, doors, roofs, hurricane shutters, hot water heaters, air conditioners, appliances, any kind of wind resistant. Solar panels, not all solar panels are bought through PACE, but you can buy solar panels through PACE. So you need to really be careful because sometimes it doesn't show up on the tax rolls. We pay our taxes in arrears. So if I do PACE really close to tax time, it may not show up on the tax bill. It doesn't show up for a whole year. Now the lien, as soon as it's recorded, and it's supposed to be recorded within 5 days of execution, will show up on the title work. But the provision on the taxes won't show up until the next year. So it's always a year behind. So don't count on just looking at the taxes and saying, oh yeah, they have PACE. Because if they just did it, it's not going to show up yet. All right, Veronica, I think we can move on to the next changes. Now, the next changes really affect you, the real estate agents and the buyers and sellers. Really doesn't affect title at all. The first one is Standard F, found on line 432, page 8 of 12. And if you remember, that cutoff date when it talked about time is of the essence said that it ended at 5 o'clock the next day. That wasn't a Saturday, Sunday, or a national legal public holiday. Now they've taken out the 5 o'clock. So now that day, like every other day in the year, ends at 11:59 p.m. So remember that. We just had that issue recently with somebody saying, oh no, it's 5 o'clock. And we said, no, look at the new contract. No, 11:59 p.m. like every other day. The next
Did that
change,
change because the real estate agents never cut it off?
I have no clue. I think what happened is that savvy real estate agents who knew that 5 o'clock time was in there were making that, this is the way it has to be. We got 5 o'clock and it's 5:01 and you're out. So I think it was just easier to take it out and understand that, you know, it's a day like every other day. It's going to end at 11:59 and then we'll start the next day. On the next screen, we talk about force majeure. Force majeure is standard G, starts on line 439, still page 8 of 12. Now includes governmental actions and mandates, governmental shutdowns, and epidemics and pandemics. So in 2019, when COVID hit, everybody was all up in arms because they said, oh my gosh, we don't think our contract covers epidemics and pandemics. And if you remember, the FARBAR committee had to quickly come up with that COVID-19 addendum. And so now, in order to eliminate that worry, they have now included the epidemics and pandemics, governmental actions and mandates, and governmental shutdowns as being part of the force majeure. The force majeure event will be deemed to have begun on the first day. The effect of the force majeure prevents performance, non-performance, or the availability of services, insurance, or required approval essential to closing. So again, this is really going to hit more real estate agents and buyers and sellers than it is the closing agent. Go to the next section. You're going to go all the way to line 10 of 12, and we're going to talk about, there we go, notice and delivery. So we're talking about notice and delivery. We're on 10 of 12, section O, line 526. And it says, all notices must be in writing by mail, facsimile transmission, personal delivery, or email. And I don't know if Veronica remembers, but we had one young man who was 21 years old. He had no idea what a facsimile transmission was. Honestly, he thought it was like a mammogram. Remember, Veronica? And we giggled so hard, and I said, no. And call me one day and I'll talk to you about what we used to do, mimeograph machines and all that fun stuff. But again, notices must be in writing, mail, facsimile transmission, personal delivery, or email. And all of you who love to text need to know that effective November 1st under the new FARBAR contracts, texts are no longer considered a method of notice. So they have terminated being able to text information back and forth. Again, mail, facsimile transmission, personal delivery, or email.
So quick question on that. Being we all do text a ton, could we text it, screenshot the text, put it in an email just to confirm?
It can only be by email, so your text won't mean anything. Now,
Okay.
yes, if you did a text and then sent it to everybody by email, you're now sending it by email, right?
Okay.
but your original text will mean nothing under the new contract.
So they will have to confirm receipt of that email for it to be,
Correct,
hold up, gotcha.
correct. Because they've decided that texts don't stick long enough. And so if it goes to arbitration or litigation, or there's any issues, you know, texts go away. So that was their determination. Just so you guys know, I always like to say that I did not have any say-so in the changes to the contract. The only thing I will admit to is that I was adamant for the last 4 or 5 years for them to add a PACE rider or put PACE verbiage into the contract. And I am happy that they finally listened to me regarding that one thing. Other than that, the contracts are done by a group of attorneys through Reptile, they call their group, and a group of real estate agents. So I will tell you, lenders and title agents, and I'm sorry, my dog is barking, and title agents have no say-so in any change. So don't ever be mad at us because something's in the contract, because we didn't write it, right, Scott? All right, Veronica, let's go to the next one. Counter offer. Line 12 of 12, line 610. It used to say that the seller rejects the buyer's offer or the seller counters the buyer's offer. They have taken away the seller rejects the offer box. So now it says either the seller counters the buyer's offer or he's going to accept this offer. So the rejection went away. I don't know why. I like that it was there, but it is gone now. So those really are the major changes to the contract. Again, contract changes affect both contracts. Does anybody have any questions on the changes in the contract before we go up to the still for discussion portion? Again, we have the new seasonal vacation rental rider, and we have the new PACE disclosure rider. CJ, did you have a question? Take yourself off mute.
Okay. Yes,
There
ma'am.
she
And
is.
I'm sorry. I'm in a high wind area, so I'll try to be quick. I'm sorry. Can you go over slowly the financing piece again? Let me get that paragraph.
Yes, yes. I'll have Veronica
yeah.
go back to that
Okay.
screen. No
Yes,
problem,
please.
because it's a
I'm
big
sorry.
change. No
It is
problem.
a big
So
change.
when it comes to the buyer having his loan approval, CJ, it's twofold now. It's not just the buyer being able to obtain his financing, but it's also the lender being in receipt of either the appraisal or an alternative valuation satisfactory to the lender. So twofold. Once the buyer's approved for his financing, still the lender has to get the appraisal. Otherwise, the loan is not approved. Oh, we can't hear you again. Are you good? Okay, good. Thank you, CJ. Anybody else? Okay, so we'll move back to the still for discussion section. Okay, still up for discussion. Remember, we talked about the definition of a municipal lien search. Remember, your contract says a municipal lien search.
Hey, Sue,
is a-
excuse me one
yes,
moment.
Yes,
I
Scott.
have a question that came in directly to me, and I think it was meant to go to everybody. And it says, does the seller have the right to get a copy of the appraisal report, even if not specifically agreed by parties in the contract?
Does the seller have the right to get a copy? No, no, it's not for the seller. It's for the lender and the borrower. It would be nice, but no, the lender is not obligated to share the appraisal with anyone else other than the consumer And the ruling says they must share it with the consumer at least 3 days prior to the date of closing, but they are not obligated to share that with anybody else. But that's always the question that comes up, though. You know, if I'm the seller, why can't you tell me what my house appraised for? CJ, do you have another question? No. Okay. So again, remember the contract says a municipal lien search only has to do with water, sewer, utilities, taxes, and assessments. So all of the agents, if the buyer wants title insurance over those items, would have to order that one piece. Now I'm going to tell you right now, nobody knows what they really want. I can tell you right now, I have never had a buyer tell me, oh yeah, I want my policy without exception for that. So keep that in mind. Who's obligated to order a municipal lien search? Agent. Title agent is required to order it for that one piece if the buyer indeed wants his policy without exception. However, most of our agents, as a courtesy to the closing, order all 3 pieces from a third-party provider. Title agent's only responsibility is to provide a copy to the parties. It is not the agent's responsibility, title agent's responsibility, to cure any code enforcement violation or open or expired permits. Not their job, because 3 things that are not covered under title insurance are unrecorded municipal liens, unrecorded code enforcement violations, and open or expired permits. So if the deadlines 5 days before, 3 days before, et cetera, are missed, is it mandatory to extend, or can the parties agree to proceed anyways? I'm not an attorney, Donna, but when I was a real estate agent, just to cover everybody's assets, I would do an addendum. Now remember that 3-day deadline, that has to do with the CFPB requirements. That is already covered under paragraph 5, where the lender has that additional 7 days. It's an automatic extension. But if you're talking about like the survey requirement or any other requirement, building permit requirement, I would always do an extension, because you just never know. You know, otherwise people are going to say, I didn't agree to that, I didn't agree to this. I would not do it via, when I was an agent, I would not do it via an email. I would do a bona fide addendum to the contract stating, this is what changed and this is what we agree to do. So I want to talk a little bit about a couple of really important paragraphs that I don't know if everybody is going over with their seller. First one is on page 4 of 12, line 209. It's the permit disclosure. It says, except this may have been disclosed by the seller to the buyer in a written disclosure, seller does not know of any improvements made to the property which were made without required permits or made pursuant to permits which have not been properly closed. Please make sure you do a good job of going over that paragraph with your seller. The other one I think is really important is on the next page, 5 of 12. It is disclosure J on line 250, and it says the seller knows of no facts materially affecting the value of the real property which are not readily observable and which have not been disclosed to the buyer. And it goes on to say at the very last sentence, except as otherwise disclosed in writing, seller has received no verbal or written notice from any governmental entity or agency as to a currently uncorrected building, environmental, or safety code violation. Really good paragraphs to go over with your seller, covering permit and municipal lien and code enforcement. Closing out of the permit. Used to be on paragraph 275 in the as-is contract. It's now on line 287. It says the seller is not required, nor shall they become required, to spend any money to close out any open or expired permits. We go to the next screen. We can see if you use the as-is contract, Roman numeral number 3 says the seller will pay up to a certain dollar value or a percentage of the sales price for costs associated with closing out open or expired building permits and obtaining required building permits for any existing improvements for which a permit was not obtained. Also, under House Bill 447, a municipality has the option to close out any old or expired permits, open or expired permits, that are at least 6 years old, as long as there are no safety code violations. And again, that is up to the municipality. So let's say 7 years ago, I had a fence put up and the permit was never closed. And I call the county and I say, you know what? Can you just close that out? And they'll probably say yes, because there's no safety code violation. Now, perhaps at the same time, I decide to add new lights to my in-ground swimming pool. They probably will not just close those out. They'll probably require an inspection. So I don't know how many of you are aware of House Bill 447, but it does allow a municipality to close out any old, open, or expired permits that are at least 6 years old, as long as there are no safety code violations. So permits are still the biggest issue we all face. Again, not Scott's responsible to close them out, not Scott's responsibility to tell the seller you have to go pay them off, you have to clean them up. This is a contractual agreement between the buyer and the seller, and all Scott is doing is ordering that 3-part search as a courtesy to the closing. Any questions? Anybody got any questions? Okay, let's go to the next section. Please make sure that Scott receives not only the contract, but any addendums. Everything we do pursuant to the written instructions found in the title commitment, the sales contract, and the lender's instructions if there is a lender. Please make sure that all parties have signed the contract. Make sure you have completed the address for purposes of notice. Please make sure, pursuant to the contract, that you send us your separate brokerage agreement as to how much we're supposed to pay you for commission. Don't make us guess. So title can pass, title on a property that isn't, no. Remember that we insure anything that is a public record. Municipal code enforcement violations, most municipal liens, and permits are not recorded. So we are passing clear title every time, because that is outside the realm of title insurance. So the property is completely clear of any kind of recorded liens that would be a problem. Recorded, that's the key word. We don't know, and we are not obligated to cover under title insurance anything like that that is not a public record. Many, many years ago, we went to the state of Florida and we said, you know what? If you make the cities and the counties put everything a public record, we'll be like that little street cleaner at the end of every, cartoon with a little mustache and a little broom, and we clean it all up. And the state said, well, they can record it if they want, but they don't have to. So if they don't have to, we don't know, we're not responsible. So I know a lot of people are not aware of that, but we are not responsible. So I want to talk about something that is happening in our industry and in your industry, and it is running rampant. And that is fraudulent sales by perpetrators pretending to be foreign sellers selling vacant land. We have had a rash of them this year. So if you are contacted by email by somebody who says they're so-and-so and they live in Canada and they want to sell their vacant lot, we're going to suggest that you do a few things. Number one, we're going to suggest before you take that listing, you get 2 types of photo identification from them, and you have some kind of a visual meeting with them like we're doing today, Skype, Zoom, FaceTime, something, get in front of them. These perpetrators are very smart. They know that we live in a DocuSigned email world. For Scott, we advise him that he uses what we call the property owner notification letter, that he also gets 2 forms of identification from the parties before he orders the title work, that he also has a face-to-face meeting with these people. These perpetrators, there's a gang of them. I'm going to do a movie called The Gang of Perpetrators. They are out there, and I will tell you things you need to watch for. I live in Canada. I will just happen to be on holiday in London when I sign my documents. I'd like you to send my money to this bank in the United States. All of those things are red flags. They are not the real people. We are catching more and more and more, but there are some we are not catching. I will tell you that you really need to be mindful. We will, Scott, look at passports with you if you think they're not legit. Sometimes they're really easy to catch. We had 2 gentlemen. Only one gentleman was selling his property, yet the real estate agent got 2 passports. They were both the same age. They both went and got their passport on the same day. That was red flags, but the biggest red flag was for their height. Instead of 176 centimeters, which is 5'10", it said 1.76 centimeters, which made them really, really tiny little people. You can tell by looking, you can see overlays. Somebody just had one recently. They didn't close just today. I got another one. And when they looked up their passports and compared them to when they bought the property several years ago, he would have been 21 and she would have been 13. Just not happening. It starts with you. It starts with you. Don't take the listing if you're not sure they are your real sellers. There are people, and they will go from real estate agent to real estate agent to real estate agent, finding someone who will list the property, and then they will go from title company to title company to title company, trying to find someone who will close that property. Scott, have you had any near misses yet up in your area? Scott's still on mute.
There we go.
There he is.
Sorry, I had to unmute myself. I was just talking away.
That's okay.
Yeah, I was talking to myself and answering as well. But no, we have not had any near misses.
Okay.
We've been thankful enough to actually double check and triple check everything that we have here, and through with the wonderful help of Ron, we eliminate a lot of that.
So just so you know, there was one in Flagler County just the last month. So for some reason, everybody's going to London on holiday. They are using a fake notary. It's So if you see anything that says the name Emma Wong, it said that Emma Wong is a notary at the United States Consulate in London. Emma Wong was a notary, but she was in Edinburgh, Scotland, and she is no longer with the embassy. So that is a fake notary. So not only are your sellers fake, but the notaries are fake. That's why I said it's a gang of perpetrators. You really need to watch, and you really need to, before you take the listing, do some vetting of those people. I am sure that the real estate agents in Naples who had the $1 million claim, because it wasn't the real seller, were really excited to get that listing. But I can tell you right now, I have talked to one of the real estate agents. They were not real happy about giving back their $25,000 commission, which they of course had to do. So be really careful out there. Does anybody have any questions on anything we talked about today?
Is there a way we can get a copy of this recording sent to us or requested?
I think Scott is recording it.
Yes.
At
It's
least
gonna
when
be
I
on our
came on,
website.
it
It'll
said
be
it was
actually a
recorded.
link on our website. You can
Awesome.
go
Thank
to
you.
uspatriottitle.com, where all of the ones that are not for CE and they're for mindful educational purposes are stored.
Yes.
So we had a couple of things in the chat over here. I didn't know
Yes.
if you saw them or not. The one right underneath, you did address the property isn't completely clear. You addressed that one. Will this be recorded and sent to us? We just addressed that one. Nuisance liens are public.
Okay, but are they recorded? There's a difference.
Some are.
If they're recorded,
And the
we
ones that are
clean them up.
recorded, we pay off.
Yep. We clean up anything that is a public record.
And the ones that they put in and they roll into the tax records and the tax roll, we pay those off as well.
Yep. Because we're paying them off through the taxes.
Yep.
But if they don't record, and I'm telling you, I have yet to see a county that records permits. These changes are only for FARBAR. Now, I did talk to somebody recently at NEFAR, and they said, watch for changes in the NEFAR contract as well. Generally, what happens, there's only like 5 contracts now in the country, in the state of Florida. There's NEFAR, FARBAR, CRISP, NABOR, and the Tallahassee Board of Realtors contract. Generally, when one makes a change, they all look at it and they go, yeah, we like that change, we'll pull that one in. Yeah, we like what you did there, we'll pull that one in. So generally, you will see when one group makes a change, the other groups will shortly follow. And I have been told by a couple of attorneys in NEFAR, they're already looking at some of the changes on the FARBAR. Whether they'll make the changes or not, we don't know. But, you know, FARBAR made the change with the PACE because NEFAR addressed it. You know, and NEFAR had a clause in there that said, you know, if there was PACE financing, the seller would pay it off at the time of closing. And in fact, that's the very verbiage from the NEFAR contract that I sent to the FARBAR committee and said, look at what a great job this group is doing. Maybe you can consider doing something like that. So they do talk to one another. I don't know where CJ is, if she's in her backyard or in prison, but I see some fence behind her.
I'm sorry, I'm actually in my bark park at home.
Oh, okay. I
Yeah.
wasn't sure. I saw the fencing and I'm like, oh, is she in prison and she doesn't want to tell us? No
Yeah,
wonder her
I'm in the-
reception is so bad.
I took the dogs out to let them play while we were zooming, and I broke up a couple of. We're tussling too hard, and the wind is blowing pretty hard here today, and there's something going on in the neighborhood with somebody trying to back a trailer into the neighbor's yard, and everybody's upset about it. So there's a
Alrighty.
lot going on around here.
Where can you get the latest FARBAR? I think we gave them the contracts, didn't we, Veronica?
I think I emailed them to,
Ryan?
and I think if not, I can email everything over. Scott, do you want me to send it to you or to Carla? I can send them over again just in case.
Yeah, just shoot them over to myself and Carla, and then we'll get the
Okay.
list of everybody that's on here and
Okay.
email it all out to them.
But they should be on Form Simplicity or whatever platform you guys use to get your contracts. You actually, we can see what you're doing, Veronica. Just
Hey,
so you know.
Veronica, I see your
Sorry.
schedule. Ooh, what you got going on? Hold on,
She's-
put that back up.
she's
We need to
putting
make
this
sure
on
you
her
got- we need
schedule.
to make sure you're allocating all your time properly.
That's right. No, trust me, she more than allocates. But yeah, we get them. I get my copies from Reptile because I have some of our underwriters who are members of the bar. I don't have access to any of the real estate sites, but they should be. I don't know if you guys use, Form Simplicity. Thanks, Tamara. Yeah, you should be able to get them out of Form Simplicity. Make sure you're using the new ones. But understand if you use the old ones, that's what we're closing under. I'm figuring it's going to take, usually it takes about a month for you all to remember you need to start using the new contracts because you've got the old one on your desktop or you've got the old one in your briefcase or,
So is
you
that
wanna
you right
start-
down the beach? Are you right down the beach?
I
and the
am. I'm
beach
right
from
down
me?
the beach from you. Yeah,
I
am.
thought you were.
Look at
I thought that was
I
you
am.
over there by the red umbrella.
Yeah, that was me in that teeny tiny bikini. Ha ha
Yeah.
ha.
Well,
Veronica's getting a laugh out of that. No, this is my bedroom. My bedroom's at the beach.
well, thank you guys very much for being here, Sue. As always, your knowledge is more than always on point, and we do appreciate all the changes and information that you share with us. And are you going to be with us next week, or is Veronica, or both?
Veronica, are we back with Scott next week? We are.
You are?
Yes, we are. We
Yes.
both.
Yes,
Yeah,
we are.
okay, so both, all right. Well, everyone, next week, November the 16th is going to be referrals, the name of the game. Learn how you can grow new leads as you get referred by your past clients, and referrals from your past clients add to your trust ratings. There's little blurbs that they put up there for it. And I just want to say again, Sue, Veronica, Linda Rogers, I know you're on here. Carla, I know you're on here. The Ryan Winter team, thank you guys very much for getting this one off today. I do appreciate it. I know there was a few hiccups in the beginning, and we probably lost quite a few in the beginning, but the rest of you, thank you very much for staying here and learning all of this information. We do appreciate you guys hanging out with us while we got through the technical side of things. And we look forward to seeing each and every one of you again next week for referrals, name of the game, and with Sue teaching us how to make more money.
Yay. Thanks again, Scott.
Thank you, guys. As always, please visit our website, uspatriottitle.com. Go to our events section. Everything's there. And you are more than welcome to send us contracts all hours of the day. We leave our emails on. Thank you. Have a great day, guys. Bye.
Bye.